On this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, we'll talk Saints, Pelicans, and Tulane football.
You saw them do what they needed to do against Army. They scored 2 touchdowns in like 5 minutes.
They were already grooving, but they're going to hit more of a groove at some point, especially as the most pivotal games come up.
And if he plays 70-plus games this season, they're going to win at least half of those, and that already puts you ahead of that 30.5 win total projection.
Welcome in to another episode of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, and we have a trip around the world of Louisiana sports edition for you today. I am Ross Jackson, here as always with Doug Mouton. The Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show is a collaboration between WWL TV and the Locked On Podcast Network, and we thank you very much for being here with us. Doug, we have a full menu today.
We're going to talk a little bit of Saints. We'll get to that in a second. We're going to talk Pelicans with Jake Madison, a Locked On Pelicans podcast, who does a spectacular job. And then we're going to talk Tulane football. Tulane got an unbelievable win this past Saturday with Matty Hudak, who does a great job as Tulane sideline reporter, and Seth Lewis from WWL TV. We got a stacked show. But I do want to start with the quarterback position. Look, Spencer Rattler had his worst game out in Chicago of the season. Does that speed up the time frame of getting a look at Tyler SHOUGH? And you still 100% believe the Saints have to get a look at SHOUGH this season, and that look has to be at least, 4 games?
Yeah, I think you want multiple games, right?
You don't
want to be in a situation to where you get him for 1 quarter for each of the last 4 games or something like that, and then all of a sudden you're trying to base an entire franchise-altering decision on just that. So I do think that you probably want to get multiple games with him. I don't know if it speeds up the timeline inherently for getting to him. However, it gives the potential for it. What I mean by that is that Spencer Rattler had this rough game and a franchise low game, or excuse me, a career low game for him up against the Chicago Bears. He's going to now get an opportunity, it sounds like, to be able to rebound from that Week 8 up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, by the way, 2 of his career high passing yards totals have come against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers during his rookie season last year. Not a lot else went well in those games, but big time passing games for him. And so I think that what it does, that it does speed things up if he doesn't respond.
Yes,
That's kind of the thing.
And I agree. I think Rattler deserves another chance to get better from this, but I think you have to take a look at Tyler SHOUGH. You have to know if you're in the quarterback market at the end of the season. And the quarterback market is so fascinating. And as I'm watching Caleb Williams, I am watching a guy who is the first pick in the draft in a quarterback-heavy draft. And it is so interesting because I don't know if he's that guy. Our plane got delayed going out of Chicago, coming back because of all his computer problems. And there were these 2 toddlers in the airport, right? And we were there for 4 hours. And these toddlers are just using up toddler energy and running in circles, chasing each other and giggling. And at one point I turned to the guy next to me and said, "Oh, look, it's Caleb Williams." Because he was running around with toddler energy,
the whole
aimlessly, doesn't know where. I've never seen a quarterback who runs in circles without a plan more than Caleb Williams. He's got to get better, and he's just an example of what's out there, but you can't win until you get that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's got to be the biggest thing, right? Do you have that player that can transcend and become the franchise quarterback? I think the Bears are still trying to figure that out with Caleb Williams.
Can that toddler turn into a franchise quarterback?
Right. And obviously, of course, the Saints are looking for that answer as well.
Yes, the Saints are looking for it as well. All right, here's what's on the menu on this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. We are going to have some drink, not some food, but some drink. We have to add the food to the show. All right, our large plates tonight, we're going to talk about the Pelicans. Jake Madison standing by, going to bring them on in a couple of minutes. Super interesting where they start this season. And we're going to talk Jake Retzlaff and the Tulane football team. Looks like Willie Green's.
Willie's going for the ball.
Yeah, Willie's trying to strip him. Yes. Retzlaff holding on tight. And then the small plates.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at, of course, John Summerall. What a job he's done so far for Tulane football. How much longer does he stick around in New Orleans? But even before that, what does everything look like for him before the end of the season? And then, of course, we'll get some, we already had our Saints talk. So we already got our Saints talk.
We already had our booze about the Saints.
Yeah.
And our dinner guests coming up in just a few minutes. So look, it's a threesome we've got.
Wow, we got a bunch of people here.
We've got Jake coming up in a minute, and then Maddie and Seth coming up to talk Tulane in just a few minutes. And our last call.
What you making, Doug?
Yes, we are making Mexico's favorite coffee drink. It is called a carajillo, and it is brilliant. I can't wait to show it to you.
I can't wait.
Tequila, and espresso in one glass. All right, we'll talk Pelicans. Look, to me, and well, to everyone, this isn't just my opinion, it's everyone's opinion. Zion Williamson has the enormous upside that he has yet to reach. If you look at him right now, your eyeballs will tell you he's in the best shape that he has ever been in, and we're going to ask Jake about that. But the FanDuel over-under for wins for the Pelicans this season is at 30.5, meaning they think the Pelicans are going to be more than 20 games under 500. That's where Las Vegas sits. And in fact, only 4 teams have a lower win total projection in the NBA. Look, the Pelicans earned that last season, and that is where I want to start with Jake Madison of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. Jake, is that number 30.5? You think that's fair?
No, I think that's a little bit low. I think that's Vegas kind of basing that number off of last season. And look, last season was a disaster for New Orleans. There's no getting around that. But this isn't last season. This is a team that's actually healthy going into the year for the most part. And unless they suffer injuries to every single key position like they did last year, look, it's the Pelicans. There may be some sort of curse there. There's a chance that that could happen here. But I just don't see that happening. Zion Williamson is doing the little things that are going to keep him healthy. Stretching, warming up more before games. That's how he stays healthy and stays out there on the court. And if he plays 70-plus games this season, they're going to win at least half of those. And that already puts you ahead of that 30.5 win total projection.
I love that stretching is the key, not just for Zion, but that ended up being the key for the Saints last year too. Dennis Allen got fired, and they were like, you know, we should stretch before practice, and then that ended up changing everything for them. Jake, on the injury front, what the heck happened with Kevon Looney? Like, this is a guy that's been healthy this entire time, and then what happened here?
Yeah, he signed with the Pelicans, is the gist that people would say here. There's probably something to that. This is a player who over the last 4 years has played over 85% of games in each season. So, of course, he comes to New Orleans and he's out for 2 to 3 weeks. This doesn't look like it's anything super serious, so expect to see him back on the court sooner rather than later. But if you're looking at positive, if you want proof that things are different, Derek Queen, who suffered a torn ligament in his hand in Summer League, was not going to be ready for the start of the year. He's going to be ready for opening night for the Pelicans. He's not on their opening night injury report, coming back ahead of schedule. When was the last time we said something like that about a New Orleans Pelicans player? So if you want to look at it from the injury perspective, they're already better than they were last year, I guess.
There you go. It's a hot start.
I want to get back to Zion in a minute, but I want to ask this first. What strikes you first about what Joe Dumars do? Look, I'll say what strikes me is that the Pelicans got more athletic. You can see they got quicker. That's Jeremiah Fears and Jordan Poole. What strikes you about what Joe Dumars did in his first offseason?
I think when you look at Joe Dumars, the big question coming into him getting this job was like, has the game passed him by? He hasn't been a lead executive in over 10 years. The latter half of his tenure with the Detroit Pistons was not good. But he learned lessons from the past couple of postseasons. When you watch NBA champions or teams that go far in the playoffs, you're looking for one word, and that is creation. And whether that's self-creation, guys who can get their own shot off against a really good defense, or guys that create for others. And this team has had one player that can do that for the past couple of years, and that was Zion Williamson. Brandon Ingram can kind of get his own shot off, but 2 years ago against OKC, we saw him get locked up by Lou Dort and basically do nothing. The Pelicans really lacked a lot of creation. This offseason, they've addressed it. Jordan Poole is a guy that can create his own shot. He was a flamethrower, one of the best pull-up shooters in the league, especially from 3 last year. This is a guy that can be the #1 offensive option and play a little bit of point guard too. So you have self-creation in Jordan Poole. You also have creation for teammates in Jeremiah Fears. The rookie has looked really good in preseason, playing downhill, being a playmaker out of the pick and roll. New Orleans can be a pretty special offensive team this year. And when you look at the guys that, if Zion Williamson goes down, while you don't replace his skill set fully, you have guys that can still create for themselves, for others. That's something that the Pelicans have lacked the past couple of years. They have a ton of that this year, and that makes them a little bit of injury proof to some degree.
Yeah, let's get to Zion as you make that point there. How far can Zion help to take this team? I mean, we saw that the projection there in terms of Vegas not looking so highly on where the Pelicans can be. How much does a guy like Zion have the opportunity to change that this year?
You know, I think very big. You know, when I talked to even some people around Vegas when they were kind of making those odds, they kind of baked into that a little bit, like potential trade for Zion Williamson. I can tell you he's not going to get traded this season. They are all in on Zion Williamson. That alone is going to get you near 500, I think.
Yeah,
and while the Western Conference is really, really tough, you look at what Zion Williamson did in limited minutes last season when he played the best basketball of his career. 24.6 points per game, 5.3 assists in under 30 minutes of action is a pretty impressive stat line.
Yeah.
If you look at that per 36 minutes, so about the number of minutes a starter plays, he's averaging over 31 points per game, which would have been second in the league last year. Almost 7 assists and 9 rebounds. This is someone who's getting close to like triple-double numbers as an average on a nightly basis. That's going to take you really far. And when you look at what he does defensively, if you want a real key indicator of is this a different Zion Williamson, he's trying defensively. He easily could take defensive plays off. This is someone who carries such a high usage rate on offense. Those guys tend to not defend at a high level just to conserve some energy. But he's trying on the defensive side of the ball. He actually looked like one of the Pelicans' best defenders in preseason, especially in the 2 games they played against NBA opponents. That's highly encouraging. If he gets anywhere close to the defensive form at Duke, the Pelicans' defense, which was one of the worst in the league last season, is going to rebound pretty significantly. And if you just start making more buckets so your defense can get back and can get set, that's going to help your defense too. So Zion Williamson just coming back to this team helps them in just every single aspect. And the fact that he looks more bought in physically and just what he's doing on the court, you know, we're expecting big things from him, and that's going to mean at least good enough things for New Orleans.
Jake, love that.
I just got really pumped about the
Yeah,
Pelicans season.
Jake's
I'm
got
ready.
the over.
I'm ready.
I got to be honest, I bet the over
I'm going
today.
over.
I've already put a little bit of Mouton money on it. I don't bet big dollar amounts, but I put it on the over because I'm with Jake. I believe there's no way Zion can be healthy and you're not the over. Jake Madison, spectacular job. Thank you for giving us a few. You know what time it is? Time to bring in the other guests. All right, we are back with Seth Lewis of WWL TV and Matty Hudak, who does a great job as the sideline reporter for Tulane football. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
This, having you both here, is almost as exciting as what we saw this past weekend in Tulane in a massive game. There's a little photo here of a touchdown catch here. It was an incredible juggling, acrobatic touchdown catch by Shaz Preston here in the end zone. And if we zoom in a little bit, we can find Seth Lewis giving a wow face all the way in the back there, holding the camera. First of all, kudos to you pulling like multiple duty here.
But multiple duty saying wow and shooting.
And shooting, absolutely. And it reminded me of something because I remembered my good friend Matty Hudak here having a particularly exciting time on the sideline. And so we can go to our next one here. This is a Tajay Spears touchdown run. And if we zoom in just a little bit, we also see Matty very, very excited.
The impartial reporter.
The impartial sideline reporter, which is the fun part about being the sideline reporter, right?
Yeah.
You get to have all the, you get to
You're not
enjoy all
supposed to be impartial.
Absolutely loving all of it. So this was really fantastic, and it goes to show the passion that comes with the game of football and the passion for Tulane football right now, which I'm sure, Matty, has been a lot of fun to cover.
Yeah, I didn't have a wrist brace on this year. Like
Yeah, I was wondering if that's what that one was. Yeah.
But no, it's been a little more of a heart test this year than anything else. But it's been a blast covering them.
Yeah, that has been the best quotes from John Sumrall. This team is going to decrease my lifespan, but they really look. They've gotten it done. Look, the good teams know how to not be great and still win. I think it's obvious we haven't seen the best out of this team yet, but they're winning.
Yeah, and I think that John Sumrall knows how to get the best out of his group. That is something that we've seen consistently over these last 2 years. That sometimes is not always the prettiest, but they're gonna win the fight.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right.
Like,
Definitely not always the prettiest.
Like most of the time, they're gonna win the fight, and no matter if it's an opponent that they should beat or shouldn't beat. Like I think that is the one thing that has made John Sumrall an interesting name. Obviously, when it comes to all of the college football carousel as well, is the fact that he does have such a beat. And honestly, like of all of the coaches that I've covered, like he would be near the top of the list of, if I was a recruit, I'd be like, man, I want to play for that guy.
Yes,
I would agree with
absolutely.
that.
And I think we've seen right now the buy-in of the people uptown and beyond here in New Orleans about John Summerall because of his buy-in with the city of New Orleans. Certainly that's been something that stood out during his press conferences, which I know you have been very busy at.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hoopla surrounding the first game with the kind of jersey thing going on with Northwestern, where it was the anniversary of Katrina. They wanted to wear the white uniforms because those were the only uniforms that team was able to pack all season long. Question of whether or not the timing of that request was, enough. But again, having his finger on the pulse, knowing that that was an opportunity to connect to the city of New Orleans here. And then it's just, they released the city edition uniforms today.
Which look incredible.
Really a lot better looking than the premature EA graphics that they released displaying those uniforms. But again, I think they've really, especially with, some losses going on elsewhere in Louisiana with respect to football, it's helped a lot for Tulane to kind of fill that void.
I have something on that real quick. Losses with the other teams. Nichols, Southern, the New Orleans Saints, all 1 win so far this season.
Ouch.
Grambling 4-3. We've got Southeastern at 5-2, along with LSU at 5-2, and Tulane, the best football program in the state of Louisiana right now, college or above, and I would certainly say D1 or above, even though some of those are outside of that, at 6-1. The Tulane Green Wave are rolling.
Tulane is Louisiana's most realistic option to make the college football playoff.
They are.
Yep.
Because look, LSU's not out of it, but I mean, the ice, if you blow on it, it might break. You know what I mean? like, the ice is so thin right now.
They got to run the table.
They have to run the table. Like, I think that they have a chance this weekend against Texas A&M. What I don't believe is that they can beat Texas A&M, Alabama on the road, and Oklahoma on the road, and Arkansas somewhere in there too. No disrespect to Arkansas, but like that's where it's tough for them versus Tulane. Tulane also has to run the table, right? But it seems so much more viable based on what we've seen from them so far. And look, they've been tested, right? They got tested against Army. It was, it was looking like thin ice at one point against Army. ECU was not the easiest game in the world for them to win or to watch, to be honest. But like they have found those ways, and you feel like they're gonna get there. They're already grooving, but they're going to hit more of a groove at some point, especially as the most pivotal games come up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. What are we seeing right now out of this team? Because look, Army and ECU are not great teams. They're not competing for the playoff, and Tulane struggled to beat both of them. So is the struggle who they are, or is it the team that hasn't found itself yet and is still finding the way to win? You know what I mean? Like, how much more upside does this team have, or is the struggle what's real about this team?
I think there are real struggles, and that's what kind of put them in the end of the game situation for what they had to do against Army. But then you saw them do what they needed to do against Army. They scored 2 touchdowns in like 5 minutes in the defense. You couldn't stop anything with respect to the triple option all day, which, by the way, was down both starting linebackers, and that was really an underrated aspect of that. They make a 3-and-out stop when they needed to, and so I think there were some ugly wins this year. There was a really ugly loss, but they've kind of learned how to play through that and believe in themselves. And I think the blowouts last year were a lot more fun to watch, and they were a lot easier to kind of not worry about till the end of regulation. But did that team really believe in themselves and know how to get going when the times are tough? You at least know that Tulane has that this year.
Yeah, and it feels like this is a team that really found something in its quarterback position as well, which of course was a big question mark with people transferring out, everything. Like, that was a big question mark that they had to answer. It feels like they got the right guy.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Jake Retzloff, I mean, that's like, it's like fruit coming from heaven. I don't know exactly what to call it, but I mean, is that a thing? Fruit coming from heaven? Well, it's a different word, but you know what I mean. But for TV purposes, we just gonna say fruit, right? But I mean, like you look, and Tulane's quarterback position was a big question coming out of the spring. There's a reason why they added 2 quarterbacks this summer.
Yeah.
Right? Like Brendan Sullivan, who could have been the starter, honestly, if he didn't get hurt. And John Summerall won't let us forget that. Every time he has a chance to say, we got 2 starting quarterbacks on the roster. Like, he did look good in the fall, But like for Retzloff to have led an 11-2 BYU team last year that was like essentially a win away from making it to the Big 12 championship game, and then they whipped Colorado in the bowl game, when both teams kind of in a rare throwback, both teams had most of their players in that game too, and they still, were able to whip them. And so, yeah, to have a quarterback like that, and I think it can't be understated how impressive it is that he's been here such a short time still, and how quickly he was able to pick up the offense and be effective within the offense.
All right, speaking of this team, what is the boil water advisory on this team? What is the one thing that when you look at this team, Maddie, you say this is the thing that can derail this group right now?
I think, we talked about them needing to win out, but it's really the idea of not looking towards what the big games are in the future. Everyone circled Memphis. Now, you look at Memphis, they just lost to UAB, kind of put everything out of their own hands. And so, any talk about a game that's not this next one for Tulane, I think really could do them some damage here. And if anything, they learned in this last game that really your dreams can slip away relatively quickly.
Yeah, well, the one at a time is the one of the great sports cliches, but it really is true. And Memphis clearly didn't do that.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I also think that when you talk about the AAC, like, this has been one of the stronger years for the conference. You're talking about Memphis, I guess, isn't ranked anymore, but they were ranked, obviously, after beating Arkansas, and then obviously South Florida came up with the win over Florida earlier in the year. Like, this is a league that's talented. Literally, the top 3 teams in odds, when talking about who's going to be the group of 5 team that's in the college football playoffs, is all in the AAC. And so for Tulane to make it to the playoffs, they will have to beat Memphis on the road, right? And Memphis slipped up last year. It seemed like, Memphis isn't playing for anything. And they came here and they were looking to prove we may not be in the AAC championship game, but we want to show that we're the best team in the AAC. And they did a pretty good job of that. And then obviously if you went out, you're going to probably play South Florida. So having such a tough slate,
they will have earned it by then.
They will have earned it by then, for sure.
And we do want to take a look at the uniforms.
Yeah, these new uniforms look.
I think they hit a home run with
amazing.
these uniforms.
These are an absolute home run.
This is they're calling it the City Edition uniforms. That's the jersey. I love that blue. The blue is awesome on a jersey like that. The blue and white. Take the next one, Ben, and the helmet has the wrought iron, which is all New Orleans, and then the next one, Ben, and this is my single favorite thing about this, is the street lettering. I think that is just brilliant. And then back to the
little touch of the beads there.
Oh, a little touch of
And a
everything.
broken tile because it's New
And a
Orleans.
broken tile. Yes, do that. And then the last one, Ben. And then back to the sitting on the street. I love those. Are we all in agreement that those are killer?
Fire.
They're
fire.
They're amazing.
Fire. Fire. Retweet.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
that is
incredible.
unbelievable. I mean, like, you can't, when you talk about a city edition, it don't get more city than that.
Right.
That is the city.
Yeah.
And then even the video that they had, it was like a Birdman and Lil Wayne song coming to the neck of my woods and my hood. I was ready to run out of my car. Probably not smart in traffic.
Not smart
But I was ready to go.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely incredible. And I'm sure the players must be stoked about those.
Oh, yeah. No, they're really cool. And you just think they're hand-painted helmets, which that's a lot of effort.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize they were
And I think back to the
yeah.
Wumbo helmets last year, which, like, when they were released, they kind of looked loud, and they wore them in Charlotte against Halloween, and they looked so cool in person. And then from a recruiting perspective, they look really cool hung up on the wall and everything like that. I just think it's really cool.
That is super cool. All right, you know what time it is now?
I do.
You want to tell me?
Last call! All right, it's time for the last call where we make a drink and give a think. This is our favorite part of the show here. So we're each going to give one last opinion here before we wrap the show up. But before we do that, I want to introduce the drink that Doug's got ready for us.
Yeah, this is the Mexican version of an espresso martini. It's not a martini, but it is a coffee drink. It's called a carajillo. This is tequila with the 2 primary ingredients. This is an espresso coffee. I used a cold brew and mixed it to espresso strength. This is Liquor 43, which is a Spanish liqueur, which is vanilla, caramel heavy. So it does lean towards the sweet, which is what the tequila is for, to cut that a little bit. And we put a squeeze of orange. I gotta tell you, I got this recipe off of TikTok, and it looks
awesome.
ridiculous. We'll see when I'm done.
Yeah.
But I'm mixing a carajillo.
This is awesome. This is a little bit of like an elevated one too, because these are typically the only only 2 ingredients.
Yes,
is that right?
can be.
Yeah.
Yes,
So this is
but
awesome.
most people add
Yeah,
more
you
because
wanna
that
add
wouldn't
more
have a
stuff
lot
to
of liquor in it, and that's not going to
you
do
can't
for
have
us.
It's not going to do anything.
No,
It's not going to do
no,
anything.
not on
We're
this show.
experienced.
Are
We're
you kidding me?
experienced.
Yes.
All right, so we want to start off while Doug is finishing up the drinks. Let's get to our last calls here. Maddie, what do you got for us?
I think that ultimately what we've talked about how much respect Tulane's gotten this year, I think that they haven't gotten enough respect kind of based on the voters and everything like that. You look at how quickly they kind of penalize teams for losses, but you look at a team like Memphis who was ranked and then they lose to a team like UAB and then they fall out. But Tulane was pretty much left out of the rankings entirely after beating teams that have now beat teams that other ranked teams have lost to. And ultimately, I think that if they're able to beat these next 2 teams, that they should absolutely be in the top 25.
Love that. The transitive property should work. If you beat a team that goes and beats a team,
Yeah.
In theory.
that's got to mean
math.
something.
Sister Cynthia says it works.
That's right. That's got to mean something. Excellent stuff. Seth, what you got for us?
Can't we all be friends? Look, I know there's been a lot of chatter on Twitter and in other places of like Tulane versus LSU and if you should be someone that supports LSU and at a Tulane game. Look, I love fandom and I love the passion of fandom, but like ultimately there are some people out there that just like to root for Louisiana teams. And that's not a rivalry. The only real rivalries in Louisiana is UL Lafayette versus ULM.
Right.
Grambling versus Southern, and then some of the Southland teams. Other than that, like, I say just root responsibly.
There you go.
Yes.
Root responsibly.
I love that. And I agree 100%.
Yeah.
If you notice what I did.
I love this. So you've removed the ice.
I did a
this,
Regal
right?
shake because that has orange peels
Yeah.
in it. And we have learned on this show that that's a Regal shake when
shake.
there's peels in the shake. And then I put it in here to make a dry shake to make it a little bit more frothy.
I love it.
I see.
That's awesome.
Okay, you go with yours while I'm,
mine might be that this is the best way to make a drink. All right, so for me, I'm going to go LSU on this one. Not to buy into the LSU-Tulane rivalry here, but for me, I think LSU should strongly consider their decision making when it comes to potentially taking the buyout on Brian Kelly's contract. It's clear that LSU has a ceiling under Brian Kelly, and it's not a ceiling that matches what the standard of LSU athletics is. Kim Mulkey, Jake John, like you're getting so much from the other sports. Gymnastics, like you're getting so much from these other sports that Louisiana is starting to turn into, when it comes to LSU, a women's basketball, gymnastics, baseball town, right? Or state, rather.
Yeah.
And so I think that for me, like looking at where LSU is, I would strongly consider what that buyout could look like and how you could potentially move forward from here.
LSU has won 4 national championships since Brian Kelly has been on campus, and LSU has not been in the playoffs during that span. That's tough.
Yeah.
Bang.
By the way,
Bang.
I
That's
grated a little cinnamon
little
stick
cinnamon on
on
top.
top.
So fancy.
Yes.
I love it.
All right.
All right.
Cheers.
Toast.
Cheers.
Cheers. To John Sumrall.
Cheers to John Sumrall.
Yeah,
For
there we
standing
go.
up for the
Yeah.
city of New Orleans. Look,
Yeah.
everybody take their sip. I'll do my last call real quick. I think the Pelicans go significantly over that 30.5 that FanDuel has them at. I like the Pelicans team. I like where Zion is. Jake said it. I think it's true. What's wrong with it?
so
Is
good.
there-
Oh, it's good. Good.
phenomenal.
Yes. I think what got lost last season in the Pelicans not being good was that Zion played unbelievably well and played with a commitment to the defensive end that he never has before, and no one saw it.
Yeah.
I think if we get that guy with health around him, I love Jordan Poole, I love a more athletic team, I think they're at least a 500 team.
Yeah, I think Fears is going to be a star too, man. Like he was so fun to watch during the preseason and everything. I'm really in on the Pelicans.
that
as
is
well.
pretty good.
Yeah.
that
I was
is
going to say, I'm really in on this.
That's the winner. That's the real winner. That's
I'm
over
taking the
500.
over. Yeah, I'm
That's
taking the
over
over on
500
this
for sure.
drink here. We're going to get at least
Are
several
you
more
getting the
of these fired up.
tequila at all?
Not
No,
too
I
much.
asked, is there alcohol in this?
Yes.
It genuinely, that Regal shake really.
Ooh, the
something
Regal
to
shake
this, yeah.
followed by the dry shake.
This is so good.
That's dangerous.
I am getting a little bit of the orange.
The orange is
and
nice,
everything,
yeah.
but it's nice.
I
Like
got,
orange,
I got a
orange.
little cinnamon.
Got some cinnamon?
Yeah, it should be right on your
Yeah,
nose because
yeah.
you saw me grate it.
Right, orange and coffee was something I wasn't super certain about. I had never.
Joshua
had before,
on TikTok
but
says it's a winner.
Joshua swore by it, and so I was ready.
I don't think he was
I'm
right.
never sure about coffee, but this is good.
All right, well, we're gonna fire up another one of these.
Great having you on for the first time. We're going to do it again. Seth, spectacular as always. You want to take us out?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. We will see you next time. Thanks for coming through. Grab a drink. Grab a drink on us.
Pretty good.
That's upstanding. That's really